Oh my god, he's going to go around the inside and he's going to send it. He's taking the lead of the Canadian Grand Prix on the last lap. Matt Turner takes the win in a remarkable race. We have teammates coming together. How devastating!
And welcome in everybody to the iFormula League Formula 2 Round 5 here from the Hungarian circuit. And I will tell you what, as ever, I am excited for this one. And we've got a very, very exciting race here for you all today. Obviously here at the Hungarian circuit, as you can see on your screen, 2.69 miles of Hungarian asphalt, and I will tell you something. This track is one that is not for the faint of heart to make a move around here. It is regarded as, again, similar to that as Monaco. Quite a few times I have heard people say that this is the Hungarian Monaco, and I can see why. You know, aside from maybe making a move into turn 1 if you get the run with DRS, there's not really many other places you can really try to make moves. You do have a couple of the hairpins, especially watch out into turn number 2 and turn number 3. If you get on the inside there, turn number 3 is slightly off camber, so you just need to be aware of that. That if you go to the outside there, that you will probably be having a you'll be having a slower run through the corner as your opposition going up the inside, and then obviously turn 4 flat out, turn 5 the nice kink onto the hairpin there before we go into the chicanes, and a nice little sweeper section that a lot of these drivers are probably going to try and take as much of the curb as they're allowed to, while also trying to maintain speed as much as they possibly can. But enough about that. Let's talk about the championship standings as it is so far. So, Chris Byram and Cesar Cabral currently tied on points for the championship after last round here at Imola. With Carlos Quital there with 66 points in 3rd place, Lewis Archer in 4th with 52, Ivan Bothkamp in 5th with 42, and then Lewis Colon in 6th with 24 points. And I will say, regarding people to watch out for this race, obviously we have to talk about Lewis Archer, defending champion. Of course we have to. You know, he's proven time and time again that he is up there to compete with the top guys. But again, Carlos Quital, don't ever count him out. And at the moment, Chris Byram hasn't been in the session yet, so potentially Chris might be dropping around. And if that's the case, then obviously look for Cesar Cabral, Carlos Quital again to try and make up some of that ground, and for Cesar to obviously take a points lead of the championship. And then regarding the team's championship at the moment, the Cuda Works boys are definitely running away with it so far. U-Race Brazil obviously only having Cesar Cabral underneath them makes it very difficult to fight for that team's championship, as well as Origa Motorsport there in 3rd with Carlos Quital and his teammate, who is Alexander Carver-Robbins. Again, I can't see him in the timing sheet so far, but hopefully we will find that out when we get out there into the race. So what we'll do is take a look at the qualifying times so far. At the moment, Lewis Archer currently in pole position with a 131.668. And then Frederick Larson, who is a stand-in for, I believe, the Origa, the other Origa driver. I could be wrong on that one, though. So I'm sure I will get corrected as and when. But as I say, at the moment, only 4 people setting time so far, and Alex Gutnick's time not really representative of where he would like to be, but, you know, still a long way left of this session. So you still have a lot of time left to try and make up here in this qualifying session. Obviously 25 minutes here, so you've still got another 20 minutes left, 19 minutes left to really get in a lap, really put something together and make this Formula Renault 3.5 car work for you. One thing that I have noticed a lot with a lot of these drivers is that the car setups around here tend to be a little bit understeery, which, for those of you not aware, means that as you turn into the corner, the car will start to... you won't get enough rotation going through the corner. And as such, you are going to end up with a situation where, as you're going into the corner, you might get a good initial turn in, but through the mid part of the corner, for some reason the car just doesn't bite. It could be a whole host of different things, but it will just start to plow through the corner, and then means you have to delay getting on the throttle to really send that car out of the corner on the exit as fast as you'd like to. And of course, naturally, as a driver, you want to be able to accelerate as early as possible and reduce the amount of time that you are spent on the brakes. You know, anytime you're slowing down and you're not speeding up, that's time loss. As we see someone there going off in the background, I think that might be one of the new drivers we have for this race, Travis Rodriguez. A couple of new names to mention, as I said before, Travis Rodriguez and then Luke Mitchell as well. Interesting to see what they can do. Hopefully they can maybe make some... they can make a couple of moves, and who knows, we might see them battling up with the top guys like Lewis. But at the moment, Lewis sets the pace so far, and it doesn't really look like anyone's able to touch him, with Frederick Larson a full second off, and Carlos Quetao again 1.3 seconds off. So don't know whether or not that is due to lack of practice, or just generally not a strong circuit for the guys, or the setup's not working, or what. I'm sure we'll hear about it plenty after the race, with Cesar Cabral there also now setting a new personal best and going 8/10 off of Archer's time. So he'll be proud of that. Obviously wants to find some more pace to catch up to the back of Lewis Archer, and again minimize the deficit that he can take, especially from the guys behind him in the championship. And knowing that Chris Byron might not be able to make it this race means that he will probably be looking to just push even harder than he normally does, and start to almost get to a point where he's thinking now, with 5 rounds in, he's probably starting to think now, where, you know, I know the guys I'm racing with week in, week out. I know roughly what their strengths and what their weaknesses are. You know, I need to prepare my car to be as good as possible, give me the most advantage that I can get, to really start attacking for that championship win, considering I'm currently tied with the leader, and the leader isn't here this round, as we see Lewis Archer getting on the grass there a little bit, and unfortunately taking a spin, so that might mean he is going to go back to the pit lane, and we will jump on board with Cesar Cabral, one of the people that we are mentioning for the fight for this championship. And again, we talk about this championship and saying how, you know, after 5 rounds, 2 drivers are tied on points and another driver's like 5 points behind. And you look at a lot of other championships, and after 5 rounds, you know, you can kind of tell who's going to be where and who's going to be winning what race. But in this championship, I think it's going to be really difficult to tell. A lot of safety cars obviously affect the proceedings quite a bit. So, you know, you may end up knowing who's going to be top 3, for example, but to actually predict who will win is a completely different category in itself. You know, we always look at the likes of Cesar Cabral, Lewis Archer, Carlos Quetao in there as sort of the top guys, Chris Byram as well. But I think there's going to be, near the end of this championship, there's going to be quite a few situations where we are going to see some unexpected results from drivers who may or may not have had the performances that they deserved or wanted. And, you know, as is the usual case with racing, you know, incidents can happen. People can have spins, and pit stops can go wrong, and strategies can go wrong, and safety cars can all play a part in making a championship feel more alive and really influence the results of races, as we've seen quite a few times already. You know, safety cars playing out as early as lap 3 or 4, and then, you know, a couple of drivers are pitting under safety car and end up winning the race. For example, we saw that with Cesar Cabral in Interlagos, the Brazilian Grand Prix. There was a huge crash that he was involved in. He managed to get back to the pits and repair the car, but he ends up coming out and winning that race from arguably a really difficult position. But due to the fact that he didn't need to pit again, he could just go all the way to the end, and when you're in clean air, it means you can really push those lap times. So it's going to be interesting to see how this race plays out, obviously, as I mentioned, with it being quite difficult to overtake, as I'm sure you can tell, as we will jump on board now, actually, with a onboard lap with Cesar Cabral, just to show you how narrow this circuit is. It might not look like it, especially considering these cars, you think they're not going to be as wide as their F1 counterparts, but even still, these cars are wider than your average Toyota Yaris, put it that way. And then this is the corner that I was mentioning, turn 3. You've got your off camber here, so you really want to cut to the inside, and turn 4 is easily flat if you can get to that left-hand side of the circuit. If you're a bit too close to the right-hand side, you compromise your line going in, which will really set you up for just having to lift mid-corner, and then if someone takes it completely flat behind you, then they can get a really good run and slingshot themselves through. And you've got to be careful here in the chicane. And there is a sausage curb on the inside of the left part of that chicane that will really unsettle the car if you get onto it. And this section is always a little bit clumsy for a couple of the cars, especially if your car isn't set up right and isn't really pointy. You may find that if you're dealing with a lot of understeer, that section you're lifting off a lot, and you're not able to really put the power down where you want to. But it's all about car control through that section. And then we end up onto the final 2 hairpins here, trying to use as much of the exit curb as you can as well. Obviously, it does double up as the pit entry line, so you do have to be careful of drivers coming in for the pits, as Cesar Cabral will finish this lap. And is this going to improve his time? It will, but still a full second off of Lewis Archer. If Lewis is trying to make a statement here, I think he's doing quite well. Trying to say, I've been practicing all week for this, all off week, and then also all of this week. And if you guys want to get close, you've got to show me something special, because I've got it locked in the bag. And as we see there from Cesar Cabral, that is something that can happen going through that corner, trying to take it flat. If you have the steering locked on a little bit too much, you may find yourself just coming to an unfortunate spin, which hopefully doesn't happen in the race, because there can be a huge crash there if that does indeed happen. But I will say that so far the timing's pretty close for, well, between 2nd and 6th. Between 1st and 2nd, maybe not so much. Again, Lewis showing probably why he is the defending champion of this season. I think he's really starting to get to grips with the car now, and really starting to push every setup that he's got. So hopefully we'll see him start to maybe make a couple of, maybe make a couple of wins in a row, and who knows, we may end up at the end of this championship having a 4-way, maybe even 5-way title race, which I'm going to be excited for. I'm sure you guys watching will be excited for as well. The more the merrier, as they always say. You end up with, the likes of Cesar Cabral, Carlos Ghosn, Lewis Archer, Chris Byram, and then maybe somebody else. When you look at the moment, Frederick Larson, obviously not a F2 driver, but every time he's driven an F2 so far, he's really shown that he has the pace. Currently as a stand-in this race, but who knows? Maybe in the future he'll get a drive up there for one of the top teams in F2 or maybe even F1 if he so wished. And these are all the things that you look at as your team. You know, you start to. I think if you're a team manager, you start looking at some of these guys that have shown great potential in some of the other series, and you put them in, you know, as a stand-in for a couple of races into a division that, in theory, the car should be a little bit harder to drive. But you know, it's one of those things. I think that for a lot of drivers, they look at the challenge of going to the higher class and really want to show that they are there. You know, they can compete and they can really put the pressure on to the top guys, and Frederick Larson certainly proving that so far. As we will jump on board with him for a little lap, just going to see where he comes out. And at the moment, there is 11 drivers currently on the timing sheets. Chris Byram has indeed joined the session. I still think a lot of people are getting a little bit confused with the times of the races. Obviously, America did jump forward an hour recently, and the league has changed the start times for the races to accommodate that. So I think people are still trying to get used to that, especially us from the UK and from Europe. Obviously, our clocks will go forward later on in the month, so hopefully people can get accustomed to the new timings and turn out and really make these races something to remember. But I hope that it will be a good race. That is definitely something that we always look for. We always look for a great race here. You know, and the thing is this F2 car, you can really push this. Like, it's surprising how much you can push this when you're battling with another car. You know, it only takes maybe a race or two of watching F1 to think that, oh, single seaters can't race, and you know, when they're going, you know, when they're following each other, the only way they're going to get past is through DRS usages or through, you know, push to pass or whatever the case may be. But no, I think the Formula Renault 3.5 is a really good car for just showing what single seater racing can really be like. You know, the car, by any stretch of the imagination, is not easy to drive, but it's one of those things that I think as we progress through the season, obviously the drivers are going to learn the car a little bit more, and we may end up seeing closer battles as well as a result of that. And I mean, as always, regarding the championship fight, question that is on everyone's mind is who is going to come out on top. And I'm going to be honest, Cesar Cabral looks really good. He looks really, really fast this season. Obviously, Chris Byram there as well, but I think after the last couple of rounds, maybe Chris isn't finding the right sort of flow to his driving, and maybe just the setups they're working on just aren't going as good as they'd like. But definitely the last couple of rounds, I think I've noticed that Byram is he's close to Cabral always, but never quite has just enough to get past. And then, you know, we can't count out Carlos Guital as well, Lewis Archer as well. But I think Lewis, with having a round deficit, obviously he wasn't here for the opening round of the F2 season, so keep that in mind. And yet already he's quite high up in the championship standings, and as a result, it's going to mean that I think he's going to want to push as much as he can. Obviously, he wants to win every race. I think a lot of these drivers do, you know. Like every motorsport driver, if you talk to a racing driver and say, why do you race? Very few of them are going to say, you know, to just drive around, you know, to just drive the car. Most of them will be saying that they want to win, they want to compete, up near the top, and they really want to push to show that they are one of the better drivers in the league. And you know, we're definitely seeing that attitude come out from Archer, especially considering right now, I mean, you look at the time differences in qualifying, and he's found something that a lot of these other guys haven't. So I don't think we can count Archer out yet. You know, he was only down one round, which, yes, that is a 25-point deficit straight away off the lead of the championship, but you know, all it takes is Byram to have a couple of bad rounds, maybe not even finishing the points for one of them, Archer to win the race, and who knows? Who knows where we end up in, you know, 6-7 rounds time when this season is near enough over. But no, it's going to be an interesting fight. Definitely an interesting fight as time goes on. You know, I mean, and the thing is the team championship as well is something that we all need to keep an eye on, because yes, the CUDA Works team have obviously had the likes of Ivan Bovekamp and Chris Byram really starting to do really well for the top spots. You know, always scoring points. Byram up there, usually near the top of the field, and then Bovekamp not that far behind either. So in terms of a driver pairing to win the team's championship, I think CUDA unfortunately have this in the bag. You know, Cesar Cabral with U-Race Brazil in second place is great, but he only has himself. So regarding a team's championship, obviously he's not scoring the maximum that he probably could do. And the team in itself is not scoring as well as it could do, obviously with that second driver. So, you know, we may end up looking at the team standings later down the line, and who knows, maybe Origa make a comeback, or the Lumos guys maybe make a comeback, but I think it's already proving to be quite difficult for anyone to really match the CUDA guys in terms of a team championship win. But, you know, saying that, stranger things have happened, and who knows? You know, all it would take is Cesar Cabral to maybe have to win every race to beat the CUDA guys for the championship win, and maybe have Ivan or Byram just not score a couple of points in a couple of rounds, and you know, maybe we could see a team championship go to a single person. I mean, that would be a story that I think a lot of us would talk about. As speaking of Cesar Cabral, he does find a bit more pace here near the end of the session, and does go himself up into third place, currently 7/10 off of this man, Lewis Archer, who, again, seems to have just found that little something that no one else can. And the car definitely looks good out there as well when you see it on the track. And he's currently just letting a few guys through, just going off to the side of the circuit, making sure that he doesn't impede anyone's laps. Don't want to be getting any penalty points if you can help it, for sure. But yeah, it's one of those things that I think the championship itself is going to be hotly contested between drivers, and I think less on teams, which is not a bad thing. It just means that, you know, I think for us as commentators, we're going to be focusing more on the actual individual drivers and more on the way that they will be battling for going forward. As we see Lewis Archer there getting on the grass, and unfortunately not being able to slow down. That is in the barrier, and on a warm-up lap, that is not what you want. So that's probably his qualifying session over, with only 20 seconds left. So unfortunately, Lewis is not going to improve his time. There is someone who might, and that is indeed Cesar Cabral. Let's see whether or not he did improve, and unfortunately he did not. He was only a 10th or 2 off from doing so, but that means that he is also going to stay where he is, unless anyone like, for example, Ivan Bovekamp, Carlos Catao, Daniel Thomas, or Chris Byram can improve. Let's jump on board with Daniel Thomas as he comes across the line. But I don't think he's on a flying lap yet. I think this is just going to be a cruise it to the line and come back in and debrief with the team. Ivan Bovekamp, is he improving at the moment? As we will double check. Let's see if he can improve. And he does. He does improve. A 131.203. which puts him very, very close to Cesar Cabral's time. Incredibly close to Cesar Cabral's time. All you needed to find was 0.01 of a second, which is quite easy to do, but clearly just not able to extract that last couple of tenths. As we will jump on board with Carlos Gatau, who seems to be getting it a bit sideways here on his final lap, so he's going to abort that one. Seth Davidson, is he on a lap currently? He is coming through the second to last corner. Let's see if he dives off into the pit lane or whether he commits to this lap. Looks like he is committing. Very late apex here on this hairpin. You want to try and use as much of that left-hand side curb as you possibly can going down the line. And will he improve? Nope, it doesn't look like it. So that'll be the end of his running. And as such, that will be the end of qualifying here for the Hungaroring round of the iFormula 2 League. We'll now switch on over to a 5-minute warm-up, just to let the drivers get a bit more practice in, change the setups of the car, make sure that they can change back to their race setups rather than their qualifying setups. Obviously, don't want to be running the quali setup in the race, because you may end up running out of fuel. But some great scenery around this track, definitely. All in thanks to the lovely people that work on the track cams for Gourmet here in iRacing. So credit to him for all of the work that he's done. Link is in the description if you want to go and check that out for yourself. Definitely worth doing, because without that, we wouldn't get a stream that looks this good. I mean, just the cameras all the way around the track, just phenomenal. And, you know, it's new for us in the championship. You know, we've been using the default iRacing cams for a while, so it's nice to get some new ones in, give a bit of a fresh look to the stream, and make it better for you guys who are watching at home. And obviously there are a couple of other sponsors here as well, and we always thank all of our sponsors immensely for the support that they provide to the league, for keeping everything running smoothly, and providing many, many, many benefits. Obviously, if you want to get involved in the action here at the iFormula League, just follow the links down there in the description, or follow us on the website, www.iformulaleague.com, and you'll be able to keep in touch, join us in the Discord, sign up yourself if this all looks very interesting, very fun to you. Obviously, the platform we use is iRacing, so make sure you have an account as well, and you can join us completely free of charge. And hey, anything in life that's free is good, right? But just a couple more minutes here of the warm-up, and then we will get on into the race. And just as we look at that, let's see if we can show the qualifying results here for you all, just so you know what is going on. And you will have to excuse the overlay as well. There is not 3 Lumos eMotorsports drivers, it is just the 2 of them, which would be Seth Davidson and Alex Gutnecht. Jake is currently acting as a spotter for that team, so he will appear in the results pages, but he is not a valid driver. So just have to ignore that. Ignore the 12th place man. He will not be on the grid. So only 11 cars here for this race. And obviously, Lewis Archer did qualify on pole with a 1 minute 30.499. Frederick Larson and Cesar Cabral are both behind him, with only being 6/10 off each, which again means it's going to be very close between the top 4. And you know, if we look at the gap between Frederick Larson, Cesar Cabral, Ivan Bovekamp, Carlos Gatau, it is incredibly close. You know, the biggest gap between those 3 being 3/10, and that will be between Bovekamp and Gatau, who, you know, we know Gatau's quick in the race. He definitely seems to have a really good strategy to him. Definitely keeps his head up and really just focuses on making sure that he can hit his marks. Very, very consistent driver as well, so he'll be putting pressure on Bovekamp right from the word go, I imagine, as will Cabral on Larson, and then Larson on Archer. And keep in mind that Larson is indeed a reserve driver here, so you know, when we look at drivers who are looking to make a statement, Larson coming up from F3 to F2 as a stand-in for this round. You know, he did it at, I believe it was Barcelona. He came in as a stand-in and showed us all what he could do. So to do it again shows that he has some really good pace in these single-seater cars. And we'll just have to see how he does on the start. Obviously, this car being a little bit more difficult to start than these F3 cars. But I'm sure all the drivers will manage absolutely fine, as they always do. As we see a couple of drivers just doing a couple of practice starts as well. Just there in the pit lane. Making sure that they've got everything ready to go. Making sure that everything works for them as well. You know, don't want to be having any equipment issues on the start of the race. That would be disastrous. Let's jump on over back to the race screen. As we can see, Chris Byram's doing a couple of laps as well as Daniel Thomas. I think a lot of people are primarily using the time to go grab themselves a drink, grab themselves refreshments, maybe a snack or two, to, you know, just perk themselves up before this race. Because it is going to be a relatively long one here. And, of course, as always with these races, they are not shy of what the Formula 1 distance would be. So, regarding how it works in terms of laps, I mean, we're going to be looking at, as you can see on the top of your screen, 46 of them around this 2.69 mile circuit, which it sounds like it's going to be a lot of laps, and it will definitely feel that way for these drivers as they try to make up any ground possible on the opening couple, and then maybe settle into a bit of a rhythm as we go through into the later stages of the race. But let's take a look at your pole position man, Lewis Archer, here, qualifying, obviously, on pole position. And he's looking to get a really good start into turn 1. Starts on the outside of the corner, which is a bit interesting. It's not something you normally see from a lot of these cars. Is normally you would see on a lot of tracks the person on pole position starts on the inside, but when you consider turn 1, you're going into a right-handed corner, but the next corner up is going to be your left-hander, then, you know, it really starts to open up. But here we are, 5 red lights, and we are go for the Hungarian Grand Prix. A couple of people failing to get off the line well, as we will start looking into turn 1, as Lewis Archer seems to get an incredible start. Oh no, this is almost going to be 4 wide here, as, oh no, who's that? Chris Byram, unfortunately touching his teammate, going into the first corner and spinning out. That could be devastating for him, going on into the lead of this race. He's now going to probably have front wing damage, which is going to mean that he'll have to pit and maybe cost himself a bit of time, as Ivan Bovekamp seems to get through fine, and Cesar Cabral trying to chase him down with Daniel Thomas, and Carlos Guitao looking to try and maybe make a move here on Daniel Thomas. We will keep on board with Daniel Thomas. Is he going to be able to hold it the long way around the outside? And oh, he manages to do it up into the inside of the corner, and if Carlos isn't careful, he's going to have Alex Gutnecht come up his inside as well, as we will go into the hairpin here, oh sorry, the chicane, and this is a very, very interesting place to try and go side by side, but they're managing it just fine. But I think Carlos Guitao, unfortunately, has had an incident, and he is off on the side of the circuit, and it is all go here on this opening couple of laps. I think everybody is having some issues, as we will now get back on board with Alex Gutnecht for the Lumos eMotorsports guys, trying to catch up to the back of Daniel Thomas as he goes incredibly wide here out of the couple of corners before the hairpins, and it looked like there Frederick Larson was going to try and send a move up the inside, and manages to think better of it, and just settles down into these hairpins here, and was going to try and set himself up for a really good run here down into turn number 1, which is going to be the best place to maybe make any sort of moves, as Frederick Larson is going to be in that slipstream. He's going to be looking for any sort of speed advantage he can get, staying as tight as he can to the back of that car before coming out. He's going to look for the move, but nothing doing just yet, and he's just going to settle back for now, as we will see Carlos Guitao make a move up there on the inside of Travis Rodriguez, as it looks as though Chris Byram is actually in the pit lane. So I'd imagine he's coming in to repair that damage that he got early on, as we will jump back on board with this battle between Frederick Larsen and Alex Gutnecht, and it's looking like this battle is going to be really close. And it looks like Frederick Larsen's currently in the middle of a Lumos sandwich, as he's got Alex Gutnecht ahead of him and then Seth Davidson behind him, and if Alex isn't careful, Frederick's going to try and send it where you probably wouldn't expect him to, and he's going to definitely show himself in the mirrors here into the chicane, maybe try and throw Alex off a little bit, but Alex experienced enough, I think, to not look at that and definitely back off and just take his normal racing line, get through the corner, focus on what's ahead of you, and maybe try to catch up to the back of Daniel Thomas, as Frederick Larsen's going to keep trying to stay in that slipstream, stay as close as he can. Obviously the dirty air probably not helping him too much. It's going to cause a bit of understeer in the car, especially through the faster turns, like for example turn 4, that kink just before the just after the hairpin of turn 3. But turn 3 is definitely a place where you can try and follow closely if you have the bravery to do it, as he's now going to come onto the back straight here. Frederick Larsen trying to make the move on Alex Gutnecht, but probably not quite fast enough just yet, and it doesn't look like he was able to find the time. Obviously we do have a limited number of DRS usages here in this car, so a little bit different here compared to some other single-seater championships where you just have to be a second of the car in front. And it looks like there are two different lines going through turn number 3. It looked like Larsen just wanted to stick it all the way on the inside, but Alex Gutnecht opting for a more double apex approach, which we'll see how that plays out through the course of the race. I'm sure there's benefits to both. Obviously taking a double apex means that while you're wider in the middle of the corner, you can really start to put the power down and really push coming out of it, having a tighter exit line, whereas sticking more to the inside for more of the corner is going to provide probably a higher average speed through it, but you may compromise yourself on exit, as it looks as though Daniel Thomas here is going to be caught up by these drivers if he's not careful, and looks like the Alex Gutnecht and Frederick Larsen are going to try and maybe just settle themselves down a little bit and focus more on trying to catch up to the back of Daniel Thomas. Obviously perfectly allowed to do so. If you just don't battle the car in front, then you can just relax a little bit and really just ease off as much as you want, and just use the guy in front to maybe save a bit of fuel, which is ever so important, especially in a race like this. The less time you have to take fuel, the less time you'll be in the pit lane, and obviously the more time you're out there on track, as we will see Frederick Larsen trying to make a move up the inside here, and if he's not careful, he's going to have to do it again into turn number 3, and he does up the inside. Is he going to be able to make the move stick as they now go to the right-hand side of the circuit and they touch the two side pods coming together? But unfortunately, or sorry, fortunately for both of them, there is no major contact, and that's probably in thanks due to the netcode improvements that iRacing has made, and showing that you can really race these cars close now thanks to those improvements. And wow, that could have ended disastrously. Both wheels touching there through the corner, and oh no, it looks as though Alex Gutnecht got himself caught up on the inside sausage curb and ends up having to doing a little pirouette before getting back onto the track. So that's probably not what he wanted, and it's going to mean that Frederick Larsen now has a bit of a gap, as we will jump on board with these lovely cameras. Every single time I look at them, they are incredible, as Carlos Guitao is now going to look onto Seth Davidson, maybe trying to see if he can size up a move here on the inside of turn number 1 as we go down the start-finish straight, but obviously has to keep a nice and close through the hairpin, as we will see a lot of drivers taking this very late apex, as late as you can, as wide out onto the exit as you can as well, trying to avoid obviously running off track, as we will see Carlos Guitao show himself in the mirrors a bit, trying to say, hey, I am here, I will send it if you're not watching, and Seth just taking his normal line, not too distracted just yet, but definitely aware that Carlos is behind him and hunting him down quickly, as It looks like so far this is the closest battle on track, but one driver we haven't been talking about is at the moment Cesar Cabral and Ivan Bovkamp battling it out for second place in this race. And credit to Ivan Bovkamp getting himself a couple of positions off the start. Obviously really nice, that's what you want off the start, you know, if you can get that run and really push the car forward into a good position, you can then start to try and manage your own pace, manage the race and save tires, save fuel, and really start to extend your stints and potentially get an overcut here. As we know, it is quite difficult to pass, so you want to try and have track position when you do indeed come in for the pits. But speaking of people currently trying to extend the gap, Lewis Archer, we'll talk about him quickly as well, currently setting the fastest laps of the race by about a second per lap, although last lap it does seem that Ivan Bovkamp has managed to bridge the gap a little bit, so he is managing now to match the pace of the leader, but it's taking a massive effort as we see Carlos Ghitao already coming into the pit lane here. I'm wondering whether or not he has sustained any damage from somewhere, potentially. And if so, maybe that means that we could see him battling with Chris Byram as he comes out of the pit lane. But we will see whether or not that was just an early stop. We might have to ask him about that later on in the interviews, if he does indeed finish up in the top 3. As we have seen quite a lot in this championship, that an early pit stop can save you quite a lot of positions. So I wonder whether or not people will be taking an early stop, trying to maybe save the fuel, extend the fuel as much as they can, and we know the tyres will probably make it to the end absolutely fine. So I wonder if that is a strategy that Chris Byram and Carlos Ghitao are now going to put into play. Obviously they have already done their pit stop, so they don't need another one. So it's just going to be looking like just seeing whoever else can maybe follow in their footsteps, or really start to apply the pressure and push as much as they can when they have clean air, as we see Lewis Archer currently doing. Currently setting the fastest lap of the race as well with a 1:31.908. So lovely lap from him. Obviously there is a bonus point for fastest lap, so naturally you're going to be wanting to go for it, and if you can get that early on in the race and you know it's not going to be touched, then that's less that you've got to worry about later on. And currently Cesar Cabral and Ivan Bovkamp currently our closest battle on track as well, within 1 second so far. Well, the gap is closing. Cesar is managing to catch quite a bit through Sector 1, but then he seems to lose it a little bit in Sector 2 and Sector 3. And then he's not able to really get the run that he would like through turn number 1, obviously down the start-finish straight. So, you know, as we said, a lot of really difficult places to pass here, but at the moment, it seems like all of the action has just been due to drivers spinning. I don't think we've really seen anybody making massive moves, except for maybe Frederick Larson so far. And yeah, I mean, it's one of those things that now you're looking 7 laps in. You know, we've got 39 laps left, and at this point in the race, am I going to just settle where I am, just do my consistent laps, and if an opportunity presents itself, I will try and take it? Or are you going to sit back and actually be like, well, I kind of want to push and really start to see if I can maybe attack the driver in front, maybe wear his tyres out, and as such, hopefully, cause him to have to pit earlier than he would like to, and actually force him into a strategy that my initial plan was. You know, and there are a lot of games you can play by doing that. Obviously, a lot of Formula racing does come down to these pit stop strategies, and you know, how you can manage the fuel, how you can manage the tires, and really start to just push every stint as much as you can. It's not just as simple as being the fastest on track. You also need to be the fastest in the pit lane as well. Obviously, there is a mandatory pit lane limit speed, so you can't just drive in, you know, all guns blazing at 200 kilometers an hour and stop on your marks and drive back out full throttle. you know, there is an element to when do I pit, because I will be losing time. You know, and a lot of circuits, I think you will lose around about 30 seconds in the pits, so it'll be interesting to see when people do decide to come in, and when people do decide to make their stops. As I say, we've already seen a couple from 3 drivers, actually. Chris Byram, Travis Rodriguez pitting on lap number 3, and then Carlos Gattal pitting on lap number 5. So they're currently all in 9th, 10th, and 11th. So I don't think they're going to be pitting again, but we will wait and see. Maybe Chris Byron might have to because of fuel, but we will see near the end of the race whether or not he does indeed pit again for maybe a splash and dash, and or whether or not he saves fuel and tries to extend to the end and hopes for a safety car to bunch the grid up, which will make it more exciting for himself, obviously, as it looks like Cesar Cabral is catching up once again onto the back here of Ivan Bothkamp, but both of them seeming like they've got pretty similar pace so far, so naturally that's going to mean that you've got, if you are similar pace to the car in front, obviously you're, as a driver, probably getting a little bit frustrated that you can't get past, especially if you think you're going to be quicker. But there is also a flip side of, yes, I may not be able to get past, but if I'm running at least a good consistent pace, and I'm running at the pace that I normally would be in clean air, then actually I can save fuel here. I can maybe try and save on my tyres as well and just not have to push as hard to get the same sort of lap times, because I've got the benefits of slipstream down the straights. And especially once you start using DRS, you'll start to really reel the car in front in, and it's going to really show the difference in speed between having that rear wing slightly open there at the bottom, as we can see from the Renault Sport logo. You can see the top flap and the bottom flap when DRS is being used. That bottom flap will raise up and close the rear wing to stall airflow, and when you are not using DRS, obviously it remains wide open to let that air rush through and provide a little bit more downforce to the car. And that's something that these drivers have to be aware of as well, because when you do have that DRS being active, as we see Cesar Cabral getting incredibly close there to the back of Ivan Bothkamp, but not making any contact, thankfully, and these two are probably going to be battling for most of the race, I would imagine, as we are currently on lap 10 of 46, and these two drivers will not let each other go, as it looks as though Cesar may be trying to make a move here into the chicane, but yeah, thinking better of it, and rightly so, as Ivan maybe ran a little bit wide there. I think a bit of dust just kicked up off the side of the screen, and we'll see whether or not Cesar can maybe make a bit more of progress in maybe making a move, or he may potentially just use DRS on the main straight and try to just push into that gap and send it up the inside of turn 1, or maybe around the outside of turn 1 if he thinks that Ivan can attack back and into turn 2. Then it means he's going to have the inside line, which means he can maybe force Ivan into that worst part of the corner, obviously the off-cambered section of the corner. You lose so much grip when you're trying to fight against the natural curvature of the road, so we will see whether or not these drivers start to try and fight each other, as it looks like both of them using DRS here down this main straight. I think Cesar Cabral looking now up the inside, and he does send the move. Is he going to be able to hold on? It looked like he didn't get quite as good of a run, and the spot is going to be telling Ivan Bothkamp, hey, the car is still there on your inside, and oh, there's a bit of argy-bargy there as the two wheels come together, and it looks as though Cesar does manage to force his way through, but it's going to look like Ivan's maybe going to come back around the outside here of the very fast left-hander, and he does manage to do so, manages to defend his position, Cesar Cabral, and force Ivan Bothkamp to maybe take a little bit of a breather, but that got a little bit rough and tough between the two drivers there, with, you know, a bit of wheel banging, and thankfully both drivers are okay, and it doesn't look like there's any sort of damage to Ivan's car, but we will see when he comes into the pits, and whether or not he comes in this lap for any sort of damage, but it looks like he's okay. Looks like he's okay for now, And obviously if he is, then he will continue trying to chase down Cesar Cabral, but Cesar Cabral now with fresh air is going to try and push as much as he can to get that U-Race car all the way out there into the lead of the race, but it's going to be a tall order, 9 seconds behind Archer, who is currently setting incredibly consistent laps, around about in the low 1:32 32s, as it looks as though Cesar is not using his DRS to defend here, but it looks as though Bovkamp was trying to use his DRS to maybe just close the gap a little bit there on the back straight. I think I saw that rear flap being closed up, so potentially Ivan Bovkamp not quite finished here just yet, and he's going to be trying everything he can to really push forward and really start to put the pressure back on Cesar in the same way that he was being pressured in the attack of Cesar Cabral. And indeed, it also shows in the timings, as through Sector 1, Ivan Bovkamp set the fastest Sector 1 time of a 33.13, which I believe is only a tenth or two quicker, but when you add up a tenth per sector, 3 sectors over the course of the lap, that's 3 tenths. If your gap's only going to be 8 tenths of a second, within 2 laps he's going to be right back on you again. So Cesar Cabral needs to start to try and maybe find something, find a bit of pace from somewhere, and really start to push forward again, and make sure that he can absolutely run away. As through the second sector it seemed like they are both incredibly close, but Ivan Bovkamp just getting a little bit more in that second sector by only a tenth, which means the gap is going to keep closing up. And speaking of people going absolutely rapid right now, Lewis Archer again, fastest lap of the race, 1:31.9, just like it's nothing for him, as we do see the lap times coming in from Cabral and Bovkamp. That's a 1:32.3 and a 1:32.2, as we do see Frederick Larson also coming in with a 1:31.9, his personal best so far. He's starting to really push it as well, turn on the little jets and push as hard as he can to maybe try and catch up to this pack. And who knows, if Cesar Cabral and Ivan Bovkamp start fighting a bit more, then we may end up seeing actually Frederick Larson getting involved in the battle. Obviously a little bit far away just yet, but depending on how hard they fight, it may only be 5 or so laps, and who knows, Larson might be up into the back of up onto the back of them, or at least being able to see them, which will obviously push him to try even harder to really extend that gap as much as he can. And I will say, this battle currently for second place has been incredible to watch. Cesar Cabral and Ivan Bovkamp putting on a show for us. We've seen side pod banging, wheel banging, we've seen it all today, and so far there has been no horrific crashes, which is always a great sign, and showing that these guys can really race now, which is a massive improvement from where we were even just a couple weeks ago. And it's all thanks to a load of improvements that iRacing have made. So hopefully we continue to see such things being done, which means that the racing here can keep getting closer and closer, and that's what we all want to see as fans of motorsport. There's a 1:32 there, 1:32 flat almost from Cesar Cabral, so he's starting to push a little bit more now that he's got clean air. He's going to start to try and maybe push to see if he can match Archer's time and reduce that deficit a little bit. And I'm actually wondering now whether or not it's a smart idea for Cesar Cabral to maybe come in to the pits a little bit earlier than he was intending, but maybe to try and cover off Lewis's earlier pit stop. You know, as we've seen so far through this championship, there has been a lot of race wins decided by coming in to do an early pit stop and then not having to pit again later on in the race. And if we see that again, then we may actually find that Cesar Cabral ends up finding a nice little pocket for himself to lap in clean air, where Lewis Archer might not. But again, depending on the gap, Lewis Archer may be able to just get a free pit stop. Obviously, Cesar's going to be trying to push as hard as he can to avoid that, and you know, he's going to be trying to push to increase the gap to maybe 20-30 seconds, Lewis Archer. But at the moment, it looks like all 3 of them in the top 3 are running roughly similar pace, so I don't think we're going to be seeing any moves just yet. But one move that we may have to be aware of is Alex Gutnecht with his teammate Seth Davidson, who are now a little bit closer, so maybe we may see a few team orders here of Alex Gutnecht just talking with Seth and being like, hey, you know, what sort of pace are you running? Are you quicker than me? Am I quicker than you? Can we work together to maybe try and catch up to the back of Daniel Thomas, or just try and run away from the likes of Carlos Gatau? Keep in mind, again, Carlos Gatau hasn't pit yet, has pit yet, whereas a lot of other drivers haven't. So if they can work together to try and avoid any sort of issues, and just like that, Alex Gutnecht does go through. Definitely team orders on that one, and definitely showing indeed that I was right, that Alex Gutnecht has probably told Seth, hey, I am quicker than you, I want to try and maybe catch up to the guys in front, or at least give you a little bit of slipstream so you can improve your lap times as well, and we can start to try and maybe work together to run away from Carlos Gatau and make sure that Carlos can't make any moves on us, and you know, maybe try and bring this championship fight to the Ariga guys. As it looks as though the action on track at the moment seems to have dwindled a little bit. All drivers just currently settling in and just trying to run their own race for now. And it seems like Cesar Cabral has managed to pull away from Ivan Bovkamp, but we do see there in the background Frederick Larsson is indeed quite close to Ivan Bovkamp still, so he's starting to crawl back the deficit a little bit, and obviously if Bovkamp isn't careful, he may find that actually near the end of this race, and especially after the pit stops, depending on how well those go, that he may have someone to watch out for that third place spot. And obviously Lewis and Caesar are both looking to continue their form and continue putting in those second place positions, first place positions, third place wins, third place positions, and continue just being on the top step of the podium to increase the amount of points they have over each other for the championship fight. As we do see now Luke Mitchell coming into the pit lane. I'd imagine that is for damage. He did have an incident where he did go off track at one point, so I'm sure he is just going to repair that car and then get back out there again to try and compete with a couple of the other guys here on track. And so far it looks as though Lewis Archer is once again setting purple lap times. I'm not sure whether or not he's got the message that he is currently 12 seconds ahead of everyone else, or whether he just wants to extend the gap as much as he can, but I don't think anyone is even remotely close to breaking that lap time. I think our next fastest lap was from Frederick Larsson, who did a 31.9, so I'm not sure where Lewis is finding this pace from this race compared to a lot of others, but he's almost following in the Mercedes of last season's counterpart, Lewis Hamilton, and just running away with it, which is, I mean, again, defending champion, to be expected, but even still, he's putting on a masterclass of how to drive this circuit, and honestly, it does make me want to watch him for a couple of laps and just see, you know, where is he finding this time compared to everyone else. And to be honest, it just looks as though that car, he can just really place where he wants it. It looks as though the car just doesn't really have any sort of issues, and he's just driving it really smooth, just getting the car in exactly where he needs it, and can just really just work with it rather than work against the car, as we may see a few other drivers who maybe don't have their setup done quite right. You know, obviously it's quite important when you are driving to get the car working for you and your driving style, and maybe Lewis has just found something that works for him, and as such, you know, maybe some other people have just really struggled, and Hungaroring isn't a great circuit for them. Obviously it is new, to the IFL League. First time we've ran it here for a while, since it came into iRacing, I want to say a couple months ago now, but considering it is indeed brand new, it's a brand new circuit, I mean, the drivers are adapting to it really well, and I imagine a lot of these drivers have experience, obviously, watching it or maybe racing it in some other sims, but it's always a little bit different depending on the car you take to the circuit. Obviously, your brake points may not be too much different, especially if it's a single-seater you've been practicing with, but regarding the actual car and track combo, I mean, the Formula Renault 3.5 cars and any sort of Formula car really shows how good of a circuit this can be when you start adding downforce. I think out of all of the things that race here, it's definitely more suited to the Formula cars in comparison to the sort of road cars and sports cars that you would normally see in the likes of, say, the IMSA Championship, for example, or the GT Challenge Championships. And you know, it's awesome to see that there's so many different cars and configurations that all race around here, and it's always interesting to see how they compare against each other as well. You know, when you look at the likes of F1 compared to F2, for example, or F2 compared to F3, and just the time difference in it all. Obviously, not all of that is coming from the engine either. You know, a lot of people say that if you have a great engine, you know, you can end up winning the race a lot easier than a lot of other drivers, and yes, that is definitely a big part of the equation, but you also look at the levels of downforce that a lot of these cars have. You know, F1 with all of their intricate little bits of bodywork, and then compare it to the more simple Formula Renault that we have on our screens here. I mean, all you need to do is just look at the front of the sort of the front wing and see it's really only 2 or 3 elements compared to like the 5 or 6 that you've got in F1. And it really shows the level of detail that the engineers put into the cars when it's not a massive spec series like, for example, the Formula Renault is. You know, in F1, obviously, loads of different teams compete from all sorts of, you know, manufacturers and sponsors, and are all competing to make the fastest car they possibly can within the regulations that are provided. But when you have a spec series like the Formula Renault 3.5, you tend to find speed in other ways. You know, it's more down to the driver and what they can do with the car, and you know, the engineers may find some setup tweaks that work for the driver to make that driver have the most chance of winning as much as he can, but you know, even still, you're going to look at these spec series and showing that it's definitely more of a driver impact, I think. And yeah, and as we're seeing, Lewis Archer's definitely got that right combination between car and skill. So yeah, I mean, he's looking like he's just going to be untroubled the entire race, which, you know, for him, obviously he's in the lead of the race, so he doesn't mind that. You know, he can save his DRS usages for later on in the race, just in case a safety car happens, which, again, very much could do. We are only 20 laps in of a 46-lap race, so we may end up having a safety car at some point, but it looks as though, for now, Lewis is definitely just setting the pace and just driving his own race. I think, like a lot of these drivers, especially in the midfield, saying that there isn't any super tight gaps for now. Although saying that, Carlos Ghitao has caught up to the back of Seth Davidson and is pushing at a very, very quick pace compared to the driver ahead of him. And we may end up seeing a move here from Carlos Ghitao, maybe into the chicane. He does look like he was going to dive to the inside, but holds off for now. And we'll see if he makes any moves here through these sweeping corners. And it doesn't look like he will, and he'll just sort of hold off for now. Just try and get as good of a run as he can, coming out of maybe the hairpins into turn number 1 down that start-finish straight. And if he can, then obviously that's going to mean that he has a very, very good run, as I did seem to hear a driver that went off on the side of the circuit, but it looks like they have got going again, so that's always great to see. But here we go. Let's see now whether or not Carlos Ghitao can make a move here up the inside. We'll jump on board with him as he is going down the start-finish straight, and it looks as though Seth Davidson is almost pulling away here on the straight, which is definitely interesting to see, but under braking you see how tight that gap closes up to, and it looks as though Carlos Ghitao maybe outbraked himself a little bit there, not quite hitting the apex, but let's see his line here. Does he opt for the double apex approach? Does he opt for the late apex? It seems like he does, but as I mentioned before, that off-camber corner can really cause some issues if you don't quite get it right, and if you do end up more in the middle of the circuit, or even worse, to the outside of the circuit, then you can end up with a situation where you are definitely fighting against the grain of the road and really not being able to put as much pressure onto the car in front as you'd like to, as it seemed as though he wasn't expecting the driver in front to be quite as slow as he was through the kink as well. So now having to just settle behind, not really anywhere you can overtake here, and I'm sure Carlos Ghitao is going to be in his helmet just trying to look as far ahead as possible, really start to try and make any sort of moves that he can, and really think about where he is quicker than the car in front and make a move as early as the opportunity presents itself. And again, if he can, he's got Alex Gutnecht only a second up the road. You'll see it will be that Lumos car right in front of him. So once again, we may see a double overtake for Carlos Ghitao in only a couple of laps time. So here we are, back down the main straight. Is he going to be able to catch up again? It looks as though, again, the answer is no. He's going to look to maybe show his nose in a little bit, but doesn't find anything of it. Hits the apex quite nicely. Listen to the revs as he tries to really tame the car's wheel spin. Definitely easy to maybe apply the throttle a little bit earlier than you'd like and cause a spin and cause a massive crash on the exit of the corner, but just to keep that all under control as he always does. So going into now the chicane, is he going to look for a move? And it looks like Seth Davidson had a little bit of a mistake there. It was a little bit wide. Maybe this gives Carlos Ghitao the opportunity to go up the inside, and once again holds off for now and thinks better of it, and instead just tries to sit behind and wait to see if Seth makes a mistake ahead of him. And as we see, Seth is a lot quicker through the first part of this sector. I'm not sure whether or not that was Carlos maybe giving a bit more racing room to maybe get a better exit on the final couple of corners, so then that way he can maybe try and attack into the final 3 corners here, but it looks as though he isn't quite close enough just yet, and almost outbrakes himself there going into the corner. Either that or Seth definitely broke a little bit earlier than he was expecting, and Carlos using a very late line, very wide line going into the corner, but does mean that he can get on the power really early, as we see both drivers using DRS to defend and attack each other. You can see that rear flap did indeed close as Seth Davidson does go up the Carlos Ghitao goes up the inside of Seth Davidson, and let's see if Seth Davidson can maybe make a move here on the inside, as he will try and send it in there, but goes really deep into the corner and going to allow Carlos Ghitao to indeed keep that position. So Seth maybe outbraking himself a little bit as he lost his brake marker. Obviously, if a lot of people are using the curbs and you're on the inside of the corner and the curb is on the outside, which is your reference point, then you may miss it and try braking where the car that you're racing with is, and you may end up missing where you would normally brake, and as such, that's what can happen, you know. Carlos brakes early, watches the car sail past, and now he's going to try and get onto the back of Alex Gutnecht here and maybe try to make some more moves, as we will see a couple of the other drivers starting to really push up the pace of this race as well. So who knows, we may end up seeing a couple of people coming in for pit stops soon. We are halfway through this race, so you'd expect pit stops to be maybe around about lap 25, as we will see Alex Gutnecht now coming in exactly as I thought. So that does mean that Carlos Ghitao is now ahead. Obviously, he was net ahead of him anyway, obviously having done his pit stop, but he is now also ahead of him on track. So what that does mean is Seth Davidson's going to have to wait another lap to come in for the pits. And I don't think Seth particularly minds that too much. He's just going to be getting on with his own race and trying to just keep out of trouble as much as he can. And maybe he was feeling the tyres a little bit, and that's why he had those couple of mistakes, diving a bit too deep under braking as well. But let's keep on board with Lewis Archer and see whether or not he's starting to make any sort of positions. At the moment, just relaxing in the 1:31 which sounds ludicrous considering that 1:31 was near enough what quali time was. So, yeah, his race pace, pretty good, as we will see. If you look at Lewis's line through turn number 3, it looks to be completely different from a lot of other drivers, and I'm now wondering whether or not that is the line that these drivers should be taking, but it almost seems as though his car is able to do that, whereas a lot of other drivers can't quite get the turn in, being out so wide. And, you know, if that's the case, then who knows, we may end up seeing a lot of drivers maybe trying to speak to Lewis and saying, hey, you know, do you have any setup tips? You know, can you provide any sort of insight as to what you did at Hungarian, because your car looked incredible compared to a lot of others. You know, you see the change of direction in that car as well, looks absolutely insane. It looks like he's able to just really throw the car in, and the car doesn't complain a bit. Seems like the car almost wants to do it, which is something that you know, a lot of these other drivers are struggling with, as he will now lap Travis Rodriguez there and come into the pit lane as well. So he is now in for his pit stop, which will be his first and only pit stop, you'd imagine, pitting just over halfway through with only 20 laps to go here. But let's watch to see where he comes out, because that will promote Cesar Cabral to the lead of this race, as we will see Cesar Cabral go past, and then Ivan Bovkamp also go past. Interesting to note, Frederick Larsen also came into the pits. So let's see where Lewis exits. And it does seem like Lewis has exited in P3. And that will mean Frederick Larsen actually lost a couple of positions there, pitting from P3 now down to P5. Where is Carlos Gatau in all of this, actually, I'm wondering. And if Carlos Gatau is close enough, we may see a battle here. But it doesn't look like Gatau is too close. Nope, just going down the main straight here. So, unfortunately, that early pit stop for Carlos Gatau has not really led to many positions in the long run, as Alex Gutneck, Seth Davidson have all pit. And Cesar Cabral and Ivan Bovkamp have not yet pit. So, that's ones we're going to have to watch out for. And if Cesar isn't careful, there's that Chris Byram getting in the way a little bit there, and Cesar coming up onto him incredibly quickly, and maybe that was a tactical move, as we will see Chris Byram completely let Ivan Bovkamp through, absolutely no worries, and it did reduce the gap a little bit as well. So I'm wondering whether or not that was a cheeky little move there from Chris to say, hey, I can try and help you here if you want me to. And you see the lap time difference. That's almost 7/10 of a second difference between the two of them, with Chris Byram, with Cesar Cabral catching Chris Byram a little bit unaware. So yeah, it's going to be an interesting discussion to have later on after this race is over, definitely. And when we'll see now Daniel Thomas come in for the pits as well. So that has promoted Frederick Larsen back up to 4th, which you would imagine would be 2nd place in this race, or possibly staying in 4th after the pits. Depends on where everyone else comes out. But Carlos Gatau is now up into P5 as well, with Daniel Thomas seeming to take quite a while in the pit lane compared to a lot of other drivers. Currently sat in his stall for over 20 seconds, so whether or not he had any issues, we'll have to go back and check that one later on, as it looks as though he did have a little bit of a crash. So let's see if we can see what happened to Daniel Thomas before coming into the pits. as it looks as though he was... wanted to come into the pit lane, didn't know where the pit lane was, is what that looked like. So that's why he has been in the pits for a while. Speaking of people now in the pits, Ivan Bovkamp has now come in to the pit lane. So we will see Ivan now drop a couple of positions, maybe drop down into P4. We will have to watch that gap as it comes out as well. Let's see if we can actually take a look at this. See if we can see where Frederick Larsen is. And Frederick Larsen is currently going down the back straight, and it looks as though Ivan Bovkamp still hasn't gotten his tyres yet. So Frederick Larsen does get promoted up now into P3 of this race, with Ivan Bovkamp having quite a long stop there with 22 seconds in the pit lane, compared to the normal 6 or 7 that you'd see from a lot of these guys. So that is gonna, I think, maybe make Caesar think about pitting this lap, actually, if he saw the deficit there that Ivan Bovkamp has had. And let's jump on board with Caesar, actually, and see, as he does now get past Daniel Thomas. Let's see whether or not he pits this lap, as he is coming around the second to last corner. Let's see if he drives into the pit lane. Doesn't look like he is just yet. Looks like he's going to try and extend the gap, which, again, we have seen work in a couple of situations, but you've got to really show that on these older tyres and with less fuel, you can really put the pace up and really start to try and push as much as you can. And I did just realise as well, Daniel Thomas is also part of the same team that Lewis Archer is. And I think, although I'm not quite certain, but I think Daniel Thomas tried to hold up Cesar Cabral yet again, and that meant that Cesar has been hindered twice by 2 separate drivers here, with a little bit of team orders thrown in. So this is one thing that we do talk about a lot, is these team orders and team communication, is that you can do stuff like that with other drivers, provided you're not, being dangerous about it. You can certainly try your best to hinder maybe another driver, but with Cesar Cabral obviously looking like he was going to try and extend the stints and really push to maybe make a shot at winning the race, currently being the only driver that hasn't pit as well, so he is the last one to pit. So at the moment, this is what your order looks like for the rest of the race, with only 16 laps to go. Well, 17 laps to go. Including this one. So, and it looks as though now Caesar has indeed come into the pits, which will promote Lewis Archer up into first place. And I am going to jump on board with Frederick Larsen as well, because we want to see how close that gap is between Larsen and Cabral. We're looking at a pit lane time usually of around about the 35 second mark, maybe 34, depending on how aggressive you were into the pit lane. So let's see where Cesar Cabral comes out in comparison to where Frederick Larsen is, and it looks as though the gap is indeed quite wide there between Cesar Cabral and Frederick Larsen. So it looks as though that move actually played out in Caesar's favour, extending out the stints a little bit longer. And even though he did get caught up in a bit of traffic, he did manage to get past in the end. And obviously, Ivan seems to have lost a bit of positions in that pit stop round as well, having that 22-second pit stop in comparison to the normal 8 seconds that we see from a lot of these drivers. And what that does mean now is Carlos Gatau is on the back of Ivan Bovkamp, and this is going to mean wonders for Carlos, obviously wanting to try and finish top 3 again. And if he can, that's going to put his position in the championship a lot higher up than he would otherwise. And hey, if Carlos Gatau can finish in the top 3 again, once again, his strategy has played out wonderfully. Pitting early on and just running till the end and hoping that he can do it. But it needs to be all on pace now, as everyone ahead of him has indeed stopped. So this needs to be all on pace, all on skill alone. And if Ivan has anything to say about it, this is going to be one tough challenge, especially with Frederick Larsen also being so quick at the moment as well, and the gap being rather large between the two of them. You know, you're looking at a 15-second gap between Ivan Bovkamp and Frederick Larsen, so, you know, it's one of those things that's doable. With a safety car, you know, you think now, actually, we can start to close the gap up under safety car, and I can start to maybe try and make a couple moves on colder tires that other drivers wouldn't, and gain a couple positions that way rather than play it safe and just back off and hold off. But who knows? Obviously we don't know the DRS usages either, which is something that I would love to try and find a graphic for you all for at some point, but unfortunately I think that is a bit of a limitation within iRacing, is that you can't see those types of things when being a spectator. And it is a bit unfortunate, because it does mean that we just have to rely purely on saying, you know, every driver has enough for the rest of the laps remaining, and leaving it at that. But there's definitely strategy involved in when you use the DRS, because it is such a powerful tool, and being able to use it wherever you like, and for, you know, over the course of that lap, to have that extra little bit of speed and extra time there, it does mean that you will end up in a situation where, you know, if, for example, if you're like Lewis Archer, where you've been in clean air this entire time, you probably haven't used many DRS uses. So actually you're thinking, if a safety car comes up, I'm actually in a really good spot. If I can make a good run on the safety car on the first lap, and then, you know, a couple of laps after that I start using my DRSs in clean air to really run away and make sure the guys behind can't attack me, then, you know, you think that from Lewis's point of view, he has all of the chips in his favor to end up winning this race, especially with that 14-second gap he has over Cesar Cabral. But this battle between Ivan Bovkamp and Carlos Ghitao seems to start being extended a little bit here, as Ivan Bovkamp is starting to just lap that a little bit quicker, only a tenth or so, but every tenth will matter. And especially as the laps start to get further down, you're going to see all these mistakes coming in from all these drivers, and you know, it's going to start to get quite hot, I imagine, in their rooms as well, where they are racing. And what that will mean is that maybe fatigue starts setting in, and you maybe miss a break point or two that you otherwise wouldn't. But what we will see is maybe Carlos Ghitao. We know he is incredibly consistent later on into the races. He seems to not worry about the length of it at all, so maybe some endurance background there for him, which might mean that he can focus a little bit more than the driver in front. And I think Ivan Bovkamp, knowing Carlos Ghitao's pace and knowing where Carlos Ghitao has been a lot, is obviously Ivan Bovkamp's looking to really hold on to that fourth position, because that would be an amazing result for him. And especially for the CUDA Works guys, is if Chris Byram isn't up there, Carlos Ghitao needs to, Ivan Bovkamp needs to step up and really start to put in that effort for the team, and, you know, make those places up and really start to collect the points for the team as well, and not having it be sort of a one-horse race, as it were. Obviously, then you look at the flip side of it, where if Ivan Bovkamp and Chris Byram are both on it, and they both finish really well, then in terms of the team's championship, CUDA end up taking home a lot more points than a lot of other drivers will. So it can play in the team's favour, definitely, when both cars are running as well as they can be. But Chris Byram seeming to have a little bit of an issue this race, and not quite where he would want to be, definitely. But this battle seems to just keep getting closer now, and going into the chicane, Carlos Ghitao trying to maybe make a move around the inside, but once again, we have seen how patient Carlos can be, and he's probably just going to wait for a mistake from the car in front rather than force any move, and he's just going to sit back, put the pressure on, and see, hey, Ivan, how are your nerves? You know, I'm going to sit behind you, I'm going to sit incredibly close behind you, and I'm going to keep looking like I'm going to go for moves, and then when you make a mistake, I'll be there to immediately get on the back of that and make any sort of attempt at getting this 4th position as I can. And once I've got that 4th position, I'm going to try and run away from it and try and catch up to the back of Frederick Larsen and Cesar Cabral. And once again, Frederick Larsen, keep in mind, again, he was a stand-in for one of the teams coming up from F3. So, again, Frederick Larsen proving that he can step up into F2 and compete with the big boys without much practice, I'd imagine, especially if it was a late call. Obviously, we don't know when the decision was made. We don't know whether or not he's actually had enough time to practice, but regardless, it definitely shows that we do have a lot of quick drivers throughout every single category in this league, both F3, F2 here, and then also in the top flight, that F1 golden crown, as everyone wants to race in that and show the world what they can do. You know, it's the pinnacle of the podium here, and it's where every driver wants to end up, I'm sure. And we will see, obviously, at the end of this championship, we will see the I believe it's the top 3 that will get promoted up into F1, and when they get promoted, obviously there will be a couple of people who may end up dropping down, or we may end up seeing a bit of a roster shake-up as well with a couple of other drivers, like we see in real life. You know, we see drivers come and go quite often, making their steps up from the likes of F2, F3, up into that next category above them. So it's going to be interesting to see how that works out over the course of, you know, 3-4 seasons down the line. But again, Carlos Ghitao getting up really close to the back of Ivan Bovkamp, but not quite able to make anything of it just yet, as he will maybe try and make a move up the inside here, but again holds off for now. He's going to look to maybe get a really good exit, knowing that he is probably a little bit quicker through this section than a lot of the drivers around him, so maybe try and make a move on the outside of the kink, and if he can, that's going to be one heck of a move to put on his resume. But it looks as though he's just going to hold off for now, and I have noticed that Carlos seems to really drive the car into the middle of the corner, into the apex, and then starts to try and power out that way rather than taking it a bit easier into the corner, but maybe trying to make the corners, especially these hairpins, double apexes rather than just one late apex. And what it does mean is that while he really catches on the entry, seems like on exit he's just not able to get the traction that a lot of these other guys are getting, and as such, you know, the likes of Ivan Bovkamp can just sort of start to pull away. And Frederick Larsen is currently setting the fastest laps of the race. Last lap I think he did go off track, but that's why his fastest lap of 1:31.1 didn't count, but he has done a 1:31.3, so I believe Frederick Larsen is trying to catch up to the back of Cesar Cabral and maybe make a move here near the end of the race, which would be very impressive if he could. And that will put him up into P2, which again would be an incredible result. And definitely one of my drivers of the day so far. As we will see Carlos Ghitao starting to maybe try and make a maybe start to try and suss out Ivan Bovkamp a little bit more and try and force Ivan into a bit of a mistake, but both drivers seeming to run pretty similar lap times. You know, last lap 1:32.3 for Ivan Bovkamp and a 1:32.4 from Carlos Ghitao, so not much to say between them, and I wonder whether or not Carlos Ghitao does have that extra bit of pace, but just not able to show it because he's just sat right there, right behind Ivan Bovkamp, just sitting under his rear wing, and he's just not able to really push as much as he'd like to. As I do believe there is a couple of drivers that have switched positions further down the field as well, as it looks like Lewis Archer has had maybe a bit of a disconnect issue, but he's back. The graphics seem to have messed up a little bit there, but we're back. Everyone's all good. And this battle is definitely good and heating up. And I'm wondering whether or not Carlos Ghitao has any more DRS uses, and whether or not we will see him try and use one to get onto the back of of Ivan Bovekamp, and it looks like Ivan isn't using any DRS to defend. So if Carlos does have DRS, he'll look to the inside of the corner, and indeed he does. And Ivan Bovekamp maybe didn't even see him there, going up the inside so aggressively, and almost ends up chopping off his front wing. And Carlos Catal's making a very late move there into turn number 3, which is going to allow Ivan Bovekamp to take back that position, a bit similarly to how Seth Davidson had his issue. So Carlos not learning from Seth and trying to do the same sort of thing that Seth did to him, and again both of them not finding very much luck as they go out to the off camber part of the corner. And what that's going to mean is Ivan Bovekamp has a little bit of a rest, but not too much, as Carlos Catalá is immediately right onto the back of him again. And we see Carlos Catalá deciding that he's going to go above 88 miles an hour and flash a little bit. And as he does so, he's going to see whether or not he can find maybe a couple of tenths and fast forward this race a bit. And it looks as though he's going to try and maybe make a move up the inside, but nothing doing again. So once again, Carlos Catalá maybe getting a little bit frustrated here with knowing that he could be a little bit quicker than Ivan Bovekamp, but he just can't seem to find the pace. Looking like he's just going to sit on the back, and Ivan, you can see, down the straight, weaving to get out of slipstream as early as possible, break the draft, break the toe, make sure that Ivan can have as much clean space as possible, and that Carlos doesn't get any extra speed that that Ivan doesn't want him to. So that is obviously a strategy that a lot of these drivers do, but we always say that when you're defending, you've got to try and not weave as much as you would otherwise like to. You know, you've got to allow for that one defensive move and then commit to the corner so that you're not unpredictable going into the braking zones, because that's where we will see the most amount of accidents, is people making late defensive moves into braking zones. But looks as though Ivan Bovekamp only really does it at the start of the straight to break the toe, and then after that he typically just commits to one side of the corner once he realizes that the car in front isn't as close. So he can definitely just focus on getting the really good line, really good exit, and just defending as hard as he can. And that's something that I'm sure he's going to be looking at, is he's going to be looking at Carlos in the mirrors and going, well, I really, really want to get past him, but I really don't want him to get past me, so I'm going to try my best to focus on my exits rather than focus on my entries to the corner, so I can get as much traction out of them as possible. And there is another battle brewing up here as well, between Cesar Cabral and Frederick Larson. So this is also another battle for second place that we're going to have to keep an eye on. But going back onto the battle with Carlos Catalá and Ivan Bovekamp, Carlos getting, again, very, very close, but not able to make much moves, and 7 laps left to go of the race. So it's going to soon be do or die time for Carlos Catalá. He's going to have to soon throw everything that he can at Ivan Bovekamp, and if he can, he may end up, unfortunately, causing Ivan to drop a position from the grid. And obviously Carlos will be celebrating with the P4, but Ivan definitely wants to hold on to it as well. He wants to finish in P4. He wants to show that he can fight with the top guys of this championship and prove that he can defend as much as possible. And he is a really hard driver to overtake compared to a lot of these other guys. He's making that Formula Renault seem as just as wide as the track rather than as wide as a Formula Renault car. So Carlos Catalá is going to have to try and throw everything at him. And while he's doing that, Cesar Cabral and Frederick Larson further up the road are also trying to throw everything at each other, and Frederick Larson's going to try and make a couple of moves as well, but at the moment it seems like the gap between Cabral and Larson is sticking quite close, although it looks as though Cesar Cabral maybe made a mistake into turn 1, and that's put the gap really close here, as I will quickly jump back on board with Carlos Catalá going down the main straight, see if he can maybe make a move into turn number 1. But it doesn't look like anything is going to happen of it, but there is a massive lock-up there for Ivan Bovekamp, but unfortunately not able to make anything of it is Carlos Catalá. So we will jump back on board with Frederick Larson and Cesar Cabral to see whether or not any moves can be made here, whether or not Frederick Larsen can get past and into P2 of the race, which will be a very, very good result for him, and he will be incredibly happy with that if he can achieve it. So let's see what he can do, see if he can upset probably one of the favorites for this race, Cesar Cabral. I mean, obviously after qualifying, and it looks as though Frederick was gonna look to the inside, but Cesar covering that door and having a bit of a lock up there into the second to last corner. So is Frederick going to be able to maybe just sit onto the back end and maybe make a move here into turn number 1? We're going to be watching with great interest here as he does come out of the back of the corner, DRS shot, so he is going to have a bit of advantage in a straight line. Is he going to be able to make any mistakes? And it looks like he's going to try and send it up the inside, and they touch. They do indeed touch. Frederick Larsen does indeed hit the back of Cesar Cabral, but unfortunately it doesn't look like Cabral... fortunately it looks like Cabral didn't have any issues, and that does mean that Cabral has kept second place, as we will jump on board with another battle that's been developing late in this race between Chris Byram and Alex Gutknecht here for 6th position. And again, Alex Gutknecht currently the driver who has gained the most this race, gaining 4 positions off of the grid. Started in 10th, he's currently 6th, so he is going to try and hold Chris Byram off as much as he can, but we know Chris Byram is a fast driver on any given day. Maybe not the circuit that he likes the most, but definitely one that he wants to show that he can compete at when his day comes round and when the setup lines just right, as Chris Byram's maybe going to try and... I thought he was maybe going to try and make a move up the inside of the corner there, up into the final corner, but nothing yet, and he does close that DRS, and I believe Alex Gutknecht has also closed the DRS, so I don't think any straight line speed advantage except for the slipstream. But here we go, round the outside, Chris Byram, is he going to be able to make any moves under braking? Looks like he can. Is he going to be able to get the traction out of the corner? Remember, this will turn to the inside of turn number 3. Is he going to be able to send it up the inside? He can, but it looks as though they touch again, and oh no, both drivers are off. Both drivers are off. Chris Byram unfortunately having a spin, and Alex Gutknecht also having a spin, and it looks as though almost both drivers colliding again coming out of the back of that one. And it looks as though Chris Byram did go up the inside, was clearly ahead, and Alex seemed to just have no room. Maybe didn't expect Byram to be as close as he was, and they do collide, and unfortunately it did mean that both of them have dropped a position now to Daniel Thomas, who is currently trying to work with Lewis Archer, it seems like, to maybe find a bit more pace. But let's jump back on board with this battle between Carlos Quetal and Ivan Bovekamp and see whether or not any of them can maybe make any moves here. 4 laps to go, as Carlos Quetal is trying to find any edge that he has over Ivan Bovekamp. But Ivan Bovekamp's pace so far has been really, really consistent and really, really quick. So it looks as though at the moment, Ivan Bovekamp can't really find anywhere to... Carlos Quetal can't really find anywhere to pass. But this battle between Chris Byram and Alex Gutknecht is not done yet. Let's see whether or not they can remake this battle part 2, as it looks as though Alex Gutknecht has a bit more DRS uses, as he does indeed have that DRS firmly closed. And it looks like Chris Byram may be trying to make a massive lunge up the inside, locks the inside tyre a little bit, and does manage to slow the car down just enough, but not able to make any massive pass going up the inside here. And it looks as though he's going to try and... I almost thought he was going to try and send it up the inside, but behind these two is the battle for second place. Frederick Larsen, Cesar Cabral are right behind this battle. We may end up seeing this battle cost Cesar Cabral second place, and Frederick Larsen will go up into second. Again, as a reserve driver. I cannot stress enough how insane Frederick Larsen has been driving. And he's also set the fastest lap of the race by 5/10 over Lewis Archer as well, in case you're trying to keep track of that and keep track of all the points that are going on. So let's see whether or not this battle actually affects anything, as we will jump on board with Cesar Cabral, as it looks as though actually Chris Byram does just let them through. isn't battling with these guys, obviously, and just instead decides, hey, you know, you guys are quicker than me. I'm going to let you through. I'm not going to impede your race at all. And as such, what that does mean is that the gap now between Carlos Kitao, sorry, not between Carlos Kitao, between Chris Byram and Frederick Larsen is extended a little bit, it seems. It seems as though Caesar got a really good run, actually, through there. And once again, it looks like Alex Gutnecht did just let them through rather easily, which does mean that the battle is back on here between Chris Byram and Alex Gutnecht. And it looks as though battles are now breaking out on every single corner of this track. And keep in mind, this is a 10-car race. We've got 4 battling here. We have another 4 between Ivan Bovkamp and Carlos Kitao. And speaking of, just as I cut to that, Carlos Kitao tried sending it up the inside, locked up the brakes massively, and let Ivan Bovkamp straight back through to take back 4th position. So again, Ivan doing some amazing defending, and Carlos maybe making a couple of mistakes here as well, as we will now jump back on board with Chris Byram and Alex Gutnecht as they're starting a battle side by side through the sweepers, which is a place that you can't pass on, boys. Did anyone tell you? I'm pretty sure they're still thinking they're on Brazil and can pass anywhere they feel like it. Jeez, this is absolutely mental for the back end of this race. And I know there's only 2 laps left to go, but when they say it's a do-or-die attitude, these guys are definitely treating it like it's go time. And, you know, it's great to see. But let's see whether or not Frederick Larsen can make any moves here on Cesar Cabral going down the main straight. Is he going to have the top speed advantage? It looks as though both cars are actually equal on top speed there going into the corner. So neither of them really gaining anything. Maybe Cesar Cabral using a bit of a DRS usage to try and defend from Frederick Larsen. Again, Cesar wants this 2nd place. He wants to reduce that deficit. Oh, sorry, increase the gap that he will have to Chris Byram at the end of this race. Speaking of Chris Byram, he's also trying to make a move here on Alex Gutnecht, and again, nothing doing just yet. And if we look further up the road, you can see Cesar Cabral and Frederick Larsen battling. Both these cars battling so close together on track that we can cut to this battle of Chris Byram and still see the other one happening right in front of their eyes. So they've got the best seat in the house to watch the battles, but, you know, Alex Gutnecht can't really watch that battle in front because he needs to be aware of a very, very hard charging Chris Byram, and Chris really wants that 7th place. He really wants every single point he can get to make sure that Lewis Archer can't catch up to the back of him, because that's going to be who Chris Byram might have to worry about near the end of this season if these results keep going the way that they are. It looks like he's going to start dropping back a little bit from the championship, and if he is, then that's going to mean that he'll have to worry about Lewis Archer, who did miss the opening round, and oh no! That looks like Alex Gutnecht had a little bit of a spin, maybe got his tyres there on the outside of the circuit, the dirty part of the track, and got on the power a little bit too early, and that meant, no sir, you are in a bit of trouble. And here we go, up the inside, a bit of argy-bargy there between Frederick Larsen and Cesar Cabral, and again, both side pods banging away, wheels banging, and again, oh my gosh, both drivers taking each other out. That's Frederick Larsen coming, Cesar Cabral coming across Frederick Larsen, and that's Cesar Cabral maybe even out of the race. The back of that car completely off, no rear wing, engine cover completely off, maybe even gearbox damage. On the final lap of this race, Frederick Larsen is 2nd, but has potentially maybe a penalty to come. If anything, if any stewards are looking at that, potentially they may have to review that one. It looked as though that was all Cesar Cabral though, coming across so early, but Frederick Larsen maybe trying to squeeze Cesar up to the inside, and unfortunately both drivers are not really having much of a although it does look as though Frederick Larsen is slowing a bit actually. I'm wondering whether or not he thinks that whether or not he's actually going to be letting Cesar Cabral come through after what happened. but Frederick Larsen is definitely slowing here. So unless Frederick Larsen has run out of fuel here on the final lap of this race, Cesar Cabral is actually going to come home in second place with no rear wing. No rear wing. None. Final lap of the race, finishes P2, no rear wing. I feel as though Frederick Larsen did let Cesar Cabral through there at the end, but bloomin' heck, boys. Once again, the battle was kicking up right at the end. Right at the end of the race, the battle seemed to all just go absolutely crazy. What was that? Cesar Cabral with no rear wing, finishing second place. Frederick Larsen letting him through on the final lap of the race for some reason. I mean, mate, Larsen has done that twice. He's done that twice. People who have been close to him at the end of the race have been let through by him twice. Because this isn't his main championship, so he's not going to be competing in that way. So it seems as though he does let these drivers through to get more points for their main championship. So, as I say, that is unbelievable sportsmanship. I don't think, looking back at that incident, I don't think it was his fault at all. We will look onto the back of this actually and see. So Cesar Cabral, we will step on board with him and see what we can see, but that was definitely a big crash there, but Cesar definitely lucky to drive away from that one even. So it did look as though it was just maybe a bit of a contact that just he came across. Let's see whether or not we can get a different angle here. Let's take a look. Oh, unfortunately he did clip the front end of Frederick Larsen there at the end. Which meant that he got sent off, spearing off into the barrier. So that's unfortunate for him, but again, another second place. But enough about that. Let's get an interview with our race winner here, which is indeed Lewis Archer, the #1 car, defending champion, and once again does take the win here of the Hungarian Grand Prix. Hey Lewis, mate. Well done again on another win for yourself. Looked pretty easy out there for you, honestly. Seemed like you got a really good run off the start and then sort of just ran away with it.
Yeah, I needed that. I absolutely needed that. I told myself coming out the last race, there's some small errors in all of these little races that we've had this season, and I just thought, I just can't be making these tiny little mistakes. And I really, really, really dialed the setup. I found some unique areas in the car. A funny setup for Hungary, and then I just tried to get every single moment right. So the race start, the qualifying lap, the practice session, the psychological damage, the early breakaway. Just this week was about fear. Absolutely.
And I will say, obviously, it does mean that you've ended up, you know, taking another dent into that championship lead that Cesar Cabral has. Obviously, Cesar now leading the championship due to Chris Byram finishing a bit further down. So I'm pretty sure that's going to mean that you're also looking to now maybe fight later on into the championship as the races go on and maybe even finish up on top. I mean, it's definitely doable.
I have one goal, and it's exactly that. It's too early to talk, but that is exactly the game. And I got a second, then a third, and then a second, and I was like, oh, come on. I need the one. Yeah,
absolutely.
I'm going to be bringing this every single week from now on.
Well, that's definitely set a statement for everyone else. I think, what was that? There was almost like 6/10 up in qualifying, and then in the race it seemed that you just had pace that no one else could really match. I think Frederick Larsen was the only one near the end who actually could sort of keep up on that pace, but it was a little bit too late near the end, so you know, it does mean that unfortunately you didn't get fastest lap of the race, but the win nonetheless. So congratulations on that one, mate.
I really tried. My fastest lap was my last lap. Oh, I really tried. Well, there's nothing left in the car.
Yeah. Yeah, it was. He did a 131.0, so 3 tenths, three more tenths to find.
Nice. Good lad, good lad.
But yeah, coming up from F3 as well. So Frederick Larsen, I think, is one to watch out for, in if he takes the F2 next season as well. But that's going to be interesting to see. But yeah, I mean, again, amazing race from yourself. Winner here by 25 seconds, so not a small margin, really, when we're looking at it. But hey, when the setup works, doesn't it? So congratulations again, mate. And hopefully we'll see you back again next time.
Yeah, no worries. There was a point during practice there where I think I put down 94 consecutive laps. That for me was the real confidence
Yeah.
boost, you know?
Yeah. Well, there you go. You've heard it here from
Anyway,
the
I'm
winner.
gonna go and watch the race, dude.
Yeah, no worries, mate.
Excellent, dude. Catch you in
Cheers,
a
mate.
bit.
But you heard it here from the leader. If you want to win the race, do 90-something laps consecutively in a row. That's how you win the races. But let's hear about our man in P2, Cesar Cabral. Let's get him in here for an interview and talk about what happened at the end of that race.
I try Formula 1.
Hey, Cesar Cabral. How's it
hey.
going, mate? Sorry to drag you in there mid conversation. But again, second place for yourself. So again, that does mean you have taken the lead of the championship over Chris Byram, because you two were tied on points, obviously, at the start of this round. So obviously, maybe not as high up as you'd like to finish, but and a little bit of an unfortunate ending there with Frederick Larsen at the end. Not sure if you can tell us what happened there between you two.
Yeah, basically, Larsen were really fast. And at that point, when he did the dive, I was like, God, what he does it. And then we touch one, touch two. Then I thought, okay, I will stay inside here. If you want to go outside, he goes outside. And my view were straight. But when I checked behind, I was like straight, but going to the right. And I was expecting it. He was also going to the right and stay in the line. So, but in the end, he did like a really fair and nice move. He waited for me. So I spoke with him after that. With who I was speaking at this time were really good. I just have to say, yeah, in general, were good. I lost so much time behind of Ivan at the beginning of the race. I could catch Archer. But yeah, I also had some problems with some lappers. The first time that I passed for Prix, I don't know why he made the overtaking so hard. And after this, before one lap before my Pete, the Daniel Thomas pushed me out of the track and made me lose like 3 seconds that I could not easily, but makes more the finish more interesting with Archer. Yeah, but happens. I'm happy for Archer. He's a really energetic person. I really like how it's what he's achieved. He was dominating the race, but I knew that I have the pace to win the race. So I'm happy, but I would have to say that I'm kind of disappointed with myself about the result.
Yeah, I mean, second place though, so it's not, it's not the worst result that it could have been. But yeah, definitely we were looking at that a couple of times, seeing that you were seeming to be held up a little bit by the teammates of the drivers you were battling against. So it was definitely interesting to see, but
yeah, actually was kind of relieved because the last race were really disaster. Like San Marino, I had a terrible start, and then even when I was recovering, someone touched me even in the first lap, and I broke the car. And then after I pushed harder, I was fourth. Then I have an incident with Ivan. I lost the control. I also have a drive-through, so I had so much problems and San Marino and Imola. And then I felt like this time I don't want to have this. So
yeah,
I just have to, if you give me permission, would like to list our sponsors. So because this is really important now, we have a real painting of the team. So we have main sponsors is Real Drive, Tech, Sensa, Motorbull, Strike Brazil, Lindóia Autopeças, Comida do Dia, and setups for NASCARs. We have a sponsorship from Elite Performance Industries, and we also have supports that is Hop Produções, Cardoso Design, Formula 3D, and Arcuri Consultoria. So this is the sponsors that we have in race, Brazil.
Is there maybe a chance that we may see a second Race Brazil car on the grid maybe at some point?
Yeah, we are trying basically, but our focus is more indie. I'm trying to push the people to see here and getting through, but as only I live in Europe, it's a bit complicated
Okay.
because of the timing. But I'm pushing, say, hey guys, let's do it. Because
Yeah.
like if you think about how much, because for us here the price that's kind of okay, but imagine for Brazil, you have to take the price plus 7 plus taxes. So it's not a simple buy a car of 10 euros, like it's almost
Yeah,
100
yeah.
reais for it's the team is big. They normally pay for this, but we have budgets for equipment for championships overall. But yeah, I'm pushing harder to have at least one more guy because I want to have the championship of the team. So
Yeah.
this is also important, the constructor team championship.
Yes, exactly. And obviously with the CUDA guys having those two drivers that seem to be able to consistently score points, and it means that, when you look at the fact that you're currently, U-Race Brazil is currently second in the team's championship, and that's just from you. You need to get that sort of second person in to really just add as a boost.
I begging for this. It's so unfair and so really unfair. The other fight, yes.
But anyway, mate, congratulations again on your second place, and hopefully next week we'll see you back fighting again, and maybe taking it a bit harder to Archer next time as well.
Yeah, for sure.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
mate.
Bye.
Cheers, mate. Okay, and next up we'll get a last little interview here with Frederick Larson, and then that'll be it for us here in the iFormula League. Frederick, again, another P3 for you, mate, and as a stand-in as well, coming up from F3, I believe, into the F2, and again, another good result, because I believe you were there in, was it Barcelona as well?
Yeah, the first race as well.
Yeah, and again, another great result, and unfortunately a little bit of contact between you and Caesar at the end of the race, but it seems though you two are, you talked it out and you two seem pretty good about it, but it also looks as though you gave Caesar back that position as well at the end. Not sure if that was intentional or not, but
Yeah, it was.
Okay.
I'm only a reserve driver, so
Mhm.
I mean, to be fair, I think he turned a bit into me. So,
Mhm.
but then again, I'm coming from F3, and I don't want to be that that douchebag that comes in and ruins everybody's races. So I
Yeah.
thought, I think I should give the position back, and I still got a podium from it, so it was
Yeah.
fine with me.
Yeah, I mean, regardless, I mean, it was an amazing result, and also you did get fastest lap, so there's another bonus point there for yourself, so that's definitely something to take away. But yeah, I mean, finishing P3, I mean, the race itself for you looked like sort of near the middle of the race, there wasn't really much going on, and then all of a sudden near the end, everything was seeming to kick off between everybody. It looked like there was about 4 or 5 battles all on track all at the same time in the last couple of laps.
Yeah, we were overtaking or lapping 2 other guys that were fighting really bad, and I was just like, yes, finally, because I thought maybe they could slow down Cabrera a bit, so I was just happy about it. And
Yeah.
then I think the guy in front, I was afraid that he wouldn't give me the space back on the straight, because he gave Cabrera the space, and then he turned back into racing line, and I was just, no, I want that position. But eventually he gave me to it, so I didn't lose any time by it.
Yeah, I mean, I think everyone here is definitely starting to get used to the blue flag stuff and letting people through as and when they can. But obviously, when they have a battle going of themselves, it's that a little bit harder than other people maybe make it seem. But again, P3 for yourself, and you know, incredibly close between you and Cabral, and there was some incredible action the entire way through. So. You know, it's always great commentating on these F2 races. You know, the Formula Renault 3.5 car. I think a little bit of an underrated gem in iRacing. Not sure if you'd agree.
Yeah, I actually like this car a lot, which is also why I'm running it. I think it's more fun to drive than the F3, but the problem is the racing can be a bit iffy because it is a bit faster. Usually, the slower cars, the better racing.
Mhm.
So yeah, I think F3 is better for racing, but F2 is it's much more fun to drive. Also, you have the DRS here, which I enjoy.
Yeah, I was going to say the DRS definitely plays a big factor, obviously, because it doesn't work the same as a lot of these other Formula series, with only a limited number of uses over the course of, 46 laps. And it's one of those things that, as a driver, do you ever sort of take that into consideration of, like, do you have preset laps, or is it just sort of using it depending on what the position you're in is?
I was actually thinking, I think there was maybe 12 laps left, and I haven't used any DRS, so I thought, yeah, if I can't get past Cabrera, I'll just put the fastest lap in.
Yeah.
But then I started fighting with him, and then I used all my DRS, but it sounds like I got the fastest lap anyway, so
Yes.
I'm pretty happy about that.
Yeah, you did a 131 flat compared to Lewis Archer's 131.3, so 0.3 quicker than the next
Nice.
fastest person. So again, another great result for yourself. And honestly, I'm at the rate that it's going, I wouldn't be surprised to see you maybe make the jump into F2 next season full time, which would be an amazing thing to see. It looks like you could really give these championship guys a run for their money as well.
Yeah, the problem is I have 2 podium finishes now in this series with only 2 races. And in the F3 series, I have, what is it, 4 races, and I only have 1 podium there, so it's embarrassing.
So what you're saying is potentially the action in the F3 is a little bit harder than F2.
I mean, there's this one guy, Victor Barrett, he is basically an alien. So I have thrown away the P1 in the Drivers' Championship, and then he has this teammate who is also insane. So
Yeah.
P3 is my goal in the F3, and hopefully more podiums.
Yeah, absolutely. But as always, a pleasure to talk to you, mate, and well done again on P3 of that race. And hopefully we might see you back as well in the championship, and maybe picking up a few more podiums as well along the way.
Yeah, I might be coming back. I'll be back, as Schwarzenegger is saying.
Absolutely. But cheers again, mate.
Yeah, thank you.
And there it is. That will do it here for us here from the iFormula League. And once again, F2 puts on a show. As always, it seems like the F2, for whatever reason, it may be, it may be a dull race partway through, but near the end of the race, you can best be assured that there will be action right until the end. And yeah, I mean, next up tomorrow we have F3, and we do have obviously the F1 as well. So make sure you all tune in for that. And yeah, that'll be it from us here from iFormula League. And we can't wait to see you back again next week for round number 6, and also tomorrow for round number 5 of the F3. But for now,